Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and there is just so much news about the green blob Pokemon right now that it's getting to the point where it's undeniable that this Pokemon is related to Zygarde in some way, but really how? That this thing seems to function almost sentiently, that it is its own Pokemon in its own regards, but at the same time it almost seems completely dependent of Zygarde. It doesn't seem like this independent being, and that's where a lot of crazy theories are coming in. We know so much about this guy, and yet we know so little in the grand scheme of what Gamefreak is cooking up. Now, since I've expertly theorized exactly what this Pokemon isn't, might as well try to take another swing with all of the new information and just kind of go down to the most basic thoughts of what this Pokemon could be in relation to Zygarde. And it seems like that this Pokemon, or this thing, is Zygarde's cells. And it seems that Zygarde is more comprised of hexagonal cells, and that is just shown in many different ways. So also we can kind of keep relating this Pokemon to Zygarde by looking at it on that cellular level. That I have seen many people talk about how Zygarde's name is potentially standing for Zygote at this point. That it's not really some kind of Z representation or anything, but if we go back to the original Pokemon 6th generation theories, back when X and Y was like kind of first announced and we were getting an idea of what Mega Mewtwo was, that there was a lot of almost gender cellular roles, such as X and Y chromosomes, because it was showing that there was a very masculine, feminine kind of breakdown between Pokemon with like X and Y roles or something like that, and that was one of the original theories that was going on. Well, a Zygote, I don't think we can really take it literally because it is like the earliest stage of development for a cell, but if we just kind of break it down, you know, Zygarde could represent something cellular, and all these little Pokemon green things could make up Zygarde on that cellular level. Because if we look at the green Pokemon, it only has like one eye. That every picture, it just looks from its left eye. That's all we see. That the other eye doesn't really do too much, and that actually relates to Zygarde in a really interesting way. That if we look on the Pokedex and we look at anything with Zygarde, only its left eye has one of the hexagons that lights up, or like what looks like its eyes, where all the green hexagons are. Those 4 clusters, only one of them lights up, and that's always on the left side. No matter what you do, I went to the Pokedex, I just played around, I just kept mashing all the buttons just to see if we could get a reaction out of Zygarde, and never once did the right eyes light up, so it either just refuses to open them, or it just doesn't function as an eye or something like that. But that just shows that this Pokemon has almost that direct correlation, that it seems like it's almost a split off of Zygarde, that it is some kind of functioning cell of Zygarde, which is really crazy to think about from Pokemon on that level, and it does make a lot of sense. That these Pokemon have main hexagons on their front and back, or maybe they are somewhat translucent, and we just have like one big hexagon on its stomach. But that's still very, very related to Zygarde because of all the hexagon hype going around Zygarde. So all we need to do is go and look at Thousand Waves and Thousand Arrows as well. So if we check out the animations for this, it looks like for 1,000 Arrows, it's raining hexagons. Like, that's pretty much the summary of the move, but at the end is something you need to pay attention to. The hexagons actually return back to Zygarde. So that's something really crazy to think about. Same for 1,000 Waves, that Zygarde almost breaks up into thousands of hexagons. They scatter and then they reform back into Zygarde, which is pretty crazy. So maybe Zygarde is actually comprised of many of these Pokemon, and they kind of shapeshift or morph into something that represents Zygarde. That these Pokemon glow, and they have been shown to glow under different circumstances. We don't know why they're glowing, but it's shown that these Pokemon do glow, and they kind of morph together and stuff in a way, and generally in Pokemon, glowing means either form transformation or evolution, so they might be like glowing to form back into Zygarde, which could show that maybe Zygarde is actually composed of many of these Pokemon, and that's why if we think about Zygarde becoming that giant shadow beast monster that we've been teased with for so long, so if we go back to those pictures back for the X and Y3 trailer, that what if that's like, that Zygarde is actually just many of these little entities, so it can change its form at will. Therefore, if you just get enough power between these things, Zygarde can technically morph into anything it wants to. So people have been theorizing that maybe it is a Mega Evolution, or something like that. Maybe it's just a form change because Zygarde is comprised of many of these different cells that can kind of just do whatever. So I think the biggest thing to round out this theory is to just kind of break down the actual size as well. So I was thinking, well, for this thing to be a cell, it has to be somewhat proportional to Zygarde in size, and we can do that by actually using the trailer. Chespin is a Pokemon that is 1 foot 4 inches tall. Zygarde is a Pokemon that is 16 feet 5 inches tall, so we'll just base our rough approximations after that. So if we take Chespin, and then we kind of look at it from the trailer when he's carrying one of these green Pokemon away, we can just kind of shape it down and see that it's about 1/2-ish. Now, since it is all curled up and it is like frightened, so it might be like in a more defensive position, it might be shrunken down, could be as close as 2/3 of Chespin's height. So we're just going to kind of base our math out of that. So then I was thinking, alright, let's take one of Zygarde's hexagons, that since we are basing this Pokemon theory off of the hexagon Pokemon thing, that we can actually see that a hexagon is about 1/15 of Zygarde's height. I pretty much just went to Photoshop and I scaled it and then I did the math. So each hexagon is about 1 foot 1 inch. And then after we, you know, break down Chespin and stuff, we can pretty much see that this Pokemon blob is a little less than a foot. So it is realistic that this thing could morph into the hexagon and then it represents the hexagon that way. So the math for these things representing hexagons does work out, and then if there's tons and tons of these little guys and they form into Zygarde, now we have something, and that's the basis of this theory, that maybe there's just these couple sentry ones, or maybe that actually everything that is Zygarde is based off of these cells, that the moves, the breakdown of the moves, and the breakdown just of how Zygarde interacts is really interesting to consider. So I think that that's what we're looking on right now for what this Pokemon could be. I'm kind of bummed out because I was hoping, like, you know, new Pokemon, it's going to be like 7th generation representation, and now we're already getting new Pokemon teasers, but it doesn't seem to be that way. It looks like this Pokemon's more related to Zygarde. I don't think its existence as a Pokemon related to Zygarde debunks 7th generation in any way. If anything, it does help it out, because the biggest problem with Zygarde is the story. So now we can just kind of look at it that maybe Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon has a side quest with one of these little guys in there, which is why they're being teased at this moment. The Pokemon Animation Special is coming out this year still, I believe. So the timeline might line up to where these guys can be canon in Super Mystery Dungeon, as well as canon in the anime, and now we have Zygarde's story, and we don't necessarily need a Z version. But at the same time, if they do a Z version, we actually have something to go off of, then, oh, it's just Zygarde. Now there's actually a huge backstory to Zygarde that really no one could have ever predicted without understanding that this little guy exists. So that's something that we can actually break off of, but it does look like we are getting some pretty big news when it comes down to Zygarde and this new Pokemon. I still think it's adorable. I love it either way. Maybe it is a standalone Pokemon that just somehow relates to Zygarde, because in the trailer it all forms together and then it like controls vines and does destructive things. So that seems pretty weird, that a ground dragon Pokemon that's made up of grass type cell things. Like, Pokemon has just really blown everything open right now, and even with all this almost direct information, it's still tricky to theorize what it could be, so there's still a lot of excitement and a lot of hype going on, so I can't wait to see what Pokemon has next. I'm still excited for anything that could happen, so I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you guys stay hyped. I'm pretty pumped about this, and I think that this is really cool, so I hope you all enjoy the video, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.